have any downtime today, but I did have some downtime, so I figured do a little stream here. Probably won't go all that long. Give me a chance to adjust my lighting. It's right in my eyes. Normal America Show, YouTube exclusive this fine day. Oh, this is no good. See if that's any better. Better! Happy to be here. So, just got a little stream for you this evening, maybe an hour at the most. First off, I hope you're enjoying this Christmas week. I am. I had a lot of time with my family this weekend, and it was much appreciated. Got to go out, see Santa Claus, go to the sort of old-fashioned toy store with my parents, my wife, and my son. That was Thursday, and Friday, Saturday. Had a bunch of other family stuff going on, making cookies, Christmas cookies, and all sorts of stuff like that. So it's been very good. It's a bummer because in my line of work, depending on what day it falls, a holiday like Christmas isn't something that I'm able to get off. So normally I work through Wednesday at 2, so that will be the case this week as well. And so I will miss my first Christmas morning with my son. And it's a real bummer because I think this is the first Christmas as a nearly 4-year-old that he's excited because he knows that Santa Claus is coming. So I'll probably miss that. And that's a bummer. But the lesson learned is I should have got rich earlier in life, and then I wouldn't have to work on Christmas Day. So my fault. I'll try to get better at that. You'll all send me tons of money this year, and then I'll never have to work on Christmas again. So we'll get that going. So it's all right though. It does in this type of work. Some of the best days you have are when you can make a special day for someone that's has a bunch of medical issues and things like that. So I always try to keep a positive attitude. For me, yeah, in the back of my head, I'm missing Christmas Day with Christmas morning with my family and with my son, but I'm also making Christmas morning special for some people that I work with. So that's how I'm trying to focus on it, and I'm going to maintain positive. So in a pretty good mood today, and happy to be here with you. Looking extra thin today? Maybe. Well, must be this angle. Got to get this lighting set up more, huh? So thank you for the kind words. So I thought that I would do a stream. I saw that there were some terrible stories. I haven't viewed the news much today, but I did see briefly before I came on. It's a terrible situation. I think in the subway systems there in New York, where it looks as if a woman has burned to death, and it looks malicious. It looks like someone set her on fire. That's, my gosh, what a horrific thing to have had happened. That's all I know. I don't know any specific details, so I just say that obviously prayers to that woman and her family. What a terrible situation. And I'm also aware that there was some sort of attack in Germany at a Christmas festival or something like that. And my heart goes out to those people as well. But I don't know details, nor will I be talking about that stuff really today. I've been so busy this week, didn't really have a chance to delve into that. So Pisco blocked me when you were discussing the cancer thing. That's what we're going to discuss here, the cancer thing. It was a Guatemalan immigrant, allegedly. Terrible, terrible, terrible. So, but yeah, I wanted to talk about this continuing resolution and sort of the cancer research talking point that was pretty prolific in the news this week. In fact, one of the callers into my show called in to talk specifically about it, and I hadn't heard this narrative until that caller called in, and or maybe I briefly heard it, and I gave my thoughts in general, and I'll repeat those sort of thoughts in general about the massive funding bills and what goes on with them, and how it's sort of narratives that create in propaganda that's like, if you are against a massive funding bill that's 1,500 pages, and one sentence in that bill says like, oh, we should celebrate kids with cancer, then that means you're a monster who wants kids to get cancer. Well, it turns out using that same logic, it's the Democrats who want kids to suffer from cancer. So we'll talk about that a little. So just give people a chance to get in here. One thing I'll talk about just briefly before I come on, I watched half of a movie called Carry On yesterday at a family function. It was on in the background, so I didn't see any of the first quarter of the movie, and then the second quarter I probably saw 15% of it. I was just coming in and out of the room, but I did sit down and watch most of the second half of the movie. It's on Netflix. It stars Jason Bateman. That was about the only person I recognized. Oh, the guy that plays Hank in um, Breaking Bad was in it. So I'm going to spoil part of the movie here. So if you want to watch the movie Carry On, uh, mute your video, and then I'll go like this when the spoilers are done, and you can come back on, okay? So we'll give everyone a chance that doesn't want... It's not the spoiling of the end of the movie, but it is a major plot point that I'm going to spoil. So everybody good? Doesn't want this spoiled? Okay. It wasn't a bad movie. It looked like sort of a cheesy action movie. It was going for sort of a Die Hard feel. The premise is it's like, I don't know if it's Christmas Eve or just the holiday season, and the main character is like a TSA agent that checks bags, and Jason Bateman's basically a terrorist who contacts him somehow. I missed the beginning of the movie, and is like, hey, you're going to leave this specific package come through, which you find out has a bioweapon on it, and you're going to leave it get on this specific plane, or else we'll take out your family. We'll take out your pregnant girlfriend. And so then begrudgingly, this bag handler has to overcome obstacles to try to get this chemical weapon onto an airplane. And it's just like an action movie, PG-13 action movie, whatever. Nothing special. Is okay, though. But I was pleasantly surprised because when they're like looking into, well, who's responsible? Who's Jason Bateman working for? He's getting paid to carry out this horrendous chemical attack. What's the motivations here? And then as they start to learn, it looks as if initially, and this is exactly what I suspected it would be, something like this. It was like pro-Assad forces, like Syrian forces, that were trying to take out witnesses to a chemical weapon attack. And so it's like, And then it was like, oh no, it's the Russians. It's the Russians that did it. And they're trying to take out a senator or congresswoman who, I don't know, is critical, something to that effect. But then this is the spoiler. I was pleasantly surprised to find they didn't go with that cheap out. It's those darn Russians. It's so easy. And instead, the villains of the movie, the reason that this attack's being carried out is it's actually people in like the U.S. military-industrial complex that are carrying out the attack. So like arm manufacturers. And they're trying to take out this congresswoman who I think basically wants a peaceful resolution to conflicts with Russia and is critical of sort of the U.S. military-industrial complex. And so they think if they gas this woman, or maybe she's critical of Russia, I don't know. But anyways, if they kill this plane and gas this woman, then the entire world will blame Russia, which will cause a big war, and they'll be able to profit by getting their agendas passed and getting all of this money for weapons. And that's the plot. That's the twist that you find out that who the terrorist guy's working for. And I thought, it's sort of interesting in today's day and age. Now, they don't come specifically out and mention Ukraine or anything like that, but it would just be super easy and simple to just be like, it's, those darn Russians, they invaded Ukraine, and now they're taking out politicians that, the plot could have very easily been, oh, the Russians want to take out this politician who's arming Ukraine. That's it, to prevent the arms. But they decided to go the other way, so I thought that was kind of interesting. Was like, neat. Just subverted my expectation a little. Honestly, the spoiler part of that doesn't really affect the movie at all. Like, who is paying Jason Bateman's character is basically irrelevant. Also, like, the only part that matters is it's well-funded. That's it. So, the old, every time you think you got the bad guy's corner, there's more that show up because they're well-funded. That's about it. But that's it. Okay. Spoilers over. So you can come back if you... But yeah, not a bad movie. Just for some mindless action movie in the background. Like I said, PG-13, so it wasn't horribly bloody or anything like that. So, but there you go. Stalled a little time before we get into the meat and potatoes here. We're at 10 minutes. Let's do it. That's usually my goal. It was a movie called Carry On, and it was on. Oh, Andrew showed me wrecking Jasmine Jafar. Thank you. Andrew's cool. Yeah, I'm glad. It's not something I do often. We could talk about that briefly at the end of it if you like as well. But normally, what I try to do is when I start a video, I try to not just have irrelevant stuff, but filler stuff for the first 10 minutes before we get to the main subject. So you give people a chance to come in if you want. Now, normally I don't stream Sundays, and also it's the holiday season, so I don't know how many people will tune in. But I did have some X exchanges, so I thought even though I'm not at home, I would do a brief stream to explain sort of my X interactions this past week. So here we go. Let's do it. Caller called in to the call-in show Friday and asked specifically about this continuing resolution. Now, I'm no expert on these things, but I'm going to give the layman's version of what a CR is. Basically, what happens is, instead of passing a budget as you would expect Congress that controls the purse strings to do, what they do is they pass these massive omnibus bills that are like thousands upon thousands of pages that sort of fund everything instead of funding like line items or, single issues or single department budgets. They just do these whole big things. And what happens is these are just laden with pork. Pork, if you're completely new to politics or anything, is just the term they use for pet projects that benefit individuals. And so let's say I'm congressman here in Clarion County and I'm against this massive spending bill and I run on the promise of we're going to cut down Washington spending. And so they come to me and they say, Rob, we really need your vote in this. So here's what we'll do. We'll give $10 million for a new post office to be built in your district, and it'll employ 30 people. Or, oh, there's an airport there. We'll put $50 million into the airport there, and that'll create 70 jobs. And then you could go back because you're trying to win your election back home, and you could say, look, I brought in these jobs. I brought in this investment. Or there's other sorts of pet projects that you could want, but you get the idea. That's what happens. Oftentimes then what happens is Congress doesn't meet their obligations to passing these on time. And so you end up at the end of the year where there hasn't been a budget passed, and then you have to have like an emergency or a continuing resolution. And so basically it's, well, we need a stopgap to fund the government because if we don't fund it in the next 3 days, well, then the government's going to shut down. When the government shuts down, it's not that big of a deal. And for example, when it happened in 2018, 2019, probably the only thing that the average person would have noticed is that like your national parks closed. That's about it. The idea that employees don't get paid, that's true if you're a federal employee that can't work because the government shut down, but you get back pay once you go back to work, once the budget passes. So you basically get a vacation. Now, it would suck over the end of the year if you were expecting to get paid next week and you don't, but that's in general what happens. But that threat is always used. Oh, there's going to be a government shutdown, so we have to do this to avoid the shutdown. Now, what I told this caller is this is the game as it's played by the Democrats. First, I'll say this. It is not really a Democrat versus Republican issue. It is an establishment versus people seen as outside the establishment issue. Because the truth is, the old guard Republicans are incredibly happy with this system. They're happy with shaking their fist at the sky and saying, we spend too much money, and then doing nothing about it. And then still voting for these bills. There's a handful in the Republican Party that usually don't, but there's almost always enough. And so that's what happened. They always say, well, we regret we have to do it, but we can't have the government shut down. We can't. But really, they don't care. They're okay with this. They're okay with the massive pork projects, etc. But as the game's played, because currently the establishment, the party that is the forefront of the establishment is the Democratic Party, they're able to control the narrative. And so the narrative is, no matter what the situation, it's always Republicans that are responsible for the shutdown. Always. It doesn't matter. If it's a Democratic president and Republican House and Senate, it's Republicans' fault. If it's a Democratic president and Democrat House and Senate, it's still Republicans' fault. If it's a Republican president and you have a Republican House but a Democratic Senate, it's Republicans' fault. It doesn't matter. The situation right now is we currently have a Democratic president, a Republican House, and the Democrats control the Senate with the tie-breaking vote. Or, I'm sorry, that's what the situation we had previously. Now, we have a Democrat president. Republicans control the House and the Senate. First thing that's worth talking about, an ex-feud I had, was with a person who you've seen me beat around in debates regularly, even so much that watching Andrew in Crucible, he said he saved your comedian at some point. Saved my comedian. The shutdown that occurred in 2018 to 2019, this was the longest shutdown in government history, modern government history at least, for the United States. And this was blamed on Republicans. Now, this is what happened then. It is true that Donald Trump had a television conference with Chuck Schumer and was like, I'll take credit for the shutdown. Yeah, I don't care. Trump says a bunch of stuff. He's always blustering, whatever. Trump's trying to get his agenda passed. The reason the government shut down in 2018 going into 2019 was because Democrats refused to allow $5 billion for the wall. They said walls were racist, walls didn't work. Now, this is the same Democrats that will spend trillions upon trillions of dollars, but they couldn't spare $5 billion for the wall. Now, of course, the candidate for Democrat, Kamala Harris, said she actually wanted to fund a wall, but $5 billion was too much to ask. And so Democrats were staunch, we're not funding it. Now, the truth is, anytime there's a shutdown, you could reasonably blame both parties, because inevitably the reason that there's going to be a shutdown is the parties can't agree on what they want in a budget to pass it. And so you could say, well, if the other party just agreed, then there wouldn't be a shutdown. So I blame them. And so people that want to say, well, Trump's responsible for the shutdown, they're not necessarily wrong. If Trump would have just acquiesced to, and Trump and the Republicans would have acquiesced to everything the Democrats wanted, sure, it would have averted a shutdown. That's true. But the same is true of the other side. If the Democrats were okay with $5 billion going to the wall, then the country wouldn't have shut down. The government wouldn't have shut down. But pondering's quick to be like, how could you blame Democrats? How could you say it was Democrats? The reason I can say that I blame the Democrats is because the Democrats said, we prioritize not spending $5 billion for the wall, and so we're willing to shut down the government over it. That's it. That was the entire debate. Democrats said, nope, we won't give that $5 billion, shut down the government. Now, from the perspective of someone who's more fiscally conservative like me, I don't so much mind the idea of saying, we want to say if there are things that we think are too expensive or things that we think we shouldn't be funding, then we say, no, we're not going to sign a bill with those things in it. That's not who the Democrats are, make no mistake. They wanted the open borders. They didn't want border security, which is why we then saw the crisis, what happened when they took over, when they won in 2021. But the principle of we're willing to shut down the government if it means we don't fund things we don't want to fund, that's fine in principle. But not to the Democrats. The Democrats say, no, that means you're a heartless bastard. You want government employees to go without paychecks. That's what they say. And so that's blamed on the Republicans. It's always blamed on the Republicans. No one said, for example, the previous shutdown, Jimmy Kimmel went on national television, was crying, well, kids won't get insurance, kids won't get health care, kids won't get food. And he cried these crocodile tears just because Republicans won't give in and sign these things and pass this budget. Where were those crocodile tears when the Democrats refused to give in and just give an extra $5 billion out of a massive bill and they wouldn't spend $5 billion on the wall? Where were the crocodile tears? Oh no, it was still Republicans' fault. And that's what happens when you control most of the mainstream media and control most of the levers of information. You control the narrative, and so it's always, oh, it's Republicans' fault. And the establishment Republicans love this, by the way, because they use that as an excuse. They go, well, even though myself personally, I wouldn't sign this budget, but politically it'll hurt us because the Democrats will blame us for shutting down the government. So now, even though you have a Republican-controlled House and a Republican-controlled Senate, the argument we're told is, well, but still, we have to pass this stuff or we'll get blamed for a shutdown. So we have to go ahead and pass it. That's what McJohnson's saying. But they want to be able to say that because the truth is they want the massive spending bill. They like the pork. They don't want single issue bills. That's what's going on. So pondering saying, oh, here's Trump. Here's Trump saying that he'll take responsibility for the shutdown. Yeah, I don't really give a shit what Trump said. Trump can take responsibility for the shutdown. That's fine. Trump certainly has some blame about that shutdown. But the number one reason that shutdown occurred was Democrats said, we ain't giving $5 billion for the wall. They threatened to filibuster, which would have meant that Republicans wouldn't have had enough votes because they'd need 60 votes. That means they couldn't do it. It doesn't matter what Trump said, I'll take responsibility. Yeah, Trump's responsible in the sense he said, nope, I'm not going to cut the border funding out. Nope, sorry. But Democrats are responsible for saying, we're going to filibuster if we have to fund the wall. No, we won't do it. That's what happened. So that's the big victory that Pondering had. Oh, it was Trump's fault. It was Trump's fault. I personally don't care. Have you ever heard me gnash my teeth and scream about government shutdowns? You have not. But people like Pondering do. So why weren't they blaming Democrats? Just give in. Give the $5 billion for the wall. Just give in. Do you think that was what Pondering said? Of course not. Of course not. Walls are racist. Walls are evil. Walls are ineffective. Remember the absurdity? The Democrats were trying to claim like we're fiscally responsible. We got to be careful where we spend our money. We can't afford $5 billion on a wall, says the people that are spending hundreds of millions sending critical race studies and gender studies to Afghanistan and every other pet project that you could ever imagine. But couldn't spend money on border security. Couldn't do that. So that's the first issue. Then the second issue came where the caller asked about this cancer funding. So if you missed it, what happened was you had Mike Johnson, the Republican Speaker of the House, basically crafted this monstrosity 1,500 and change bill that was disgusting. Trump and Elon put pressure on social media to be like, why would we sign this? This is garbage. Trump and Republicans coming into power here in January 20th. So why would you sign this? And it had all kinds of other stuff into it. We're not going to get into it right now, but it was a bad bill. None of the bills, the one that got passed here eventually sucks too. None of them are good. But it's 1,500 something pages. So it fails. Enough Republicans are worried that their constituents now, because there's a social media platform where people can speak the truth, they're going to be like, why is my congressman voting for this garbage? And they don't have to rely just on the talking heads at Fox News anymore. So Republicans are like, oh, okay, let's renegotiate this. And they cut it down to like 100 pages, but it's still spent near the same, or I don't know. Trump wanted to raise the debt ceiling. I think that's bad. We can talk about that later if people want. Anyways, second bill fails as well. Then the third bill, it ends up passing. Then you had Mike Johnson came out and said, we're going to do single issue vote. So we'll do fund government jobs, fund the National Park Service. Each of those will be their own bill. And then we'll give an up and down vote on each of those, which is good. That's what should be happening. But then he worked with Democrats and got a bill passed that Democrats unanimously voted for in the House. Do you think that's a good bill? If all the Democrats agreed to vote for it, what do you think? You think that helps Trump and Republicans? Anyways, I digress. In that first draft was monies to fund a particular organization through cancer research. And so the caller asked me what was going on, and I said, well, this is a game that Democrats constantly play. They'll fund everything. There's nothing they won't fund if they think it could remotely benefit themselves. Some of the funding can do good. Cancer research funding can do well, right? But it doesn't matter. Sure, yeah, $100 million, whatever, $200 million, sure, why not? They don't care. Same's true of the establishment Republican types. They don't care. They don't care. No one's sitting there going, whoa, is this in the budget? They don't care. It's fake money to them. Just print it. We don't care. And so then you put all that stuff in, then there's a bunch of other garbage that your opposition won't like. And they're like, well, are you going to vote against kids' cancer funding? Now, so you see the game there. So if you don't want to spend hundreds of billions of dollars on this 3-month emergency spending that's 1,500 pages that no one had the time to read, well, then you're against kids' cancer research. You see the game? They're very good at doing this semantic stuff. Oh, you're against Antifa? Well, Antifa is anti-fascist. That must mean you're a fascist. See? Brief sidestep to talk about, should your tax dollars be going to cancer research funding? Well, you could take the uber libertarian approach, which would say no, because taxation's theft. But let's go beyond that. I personally wouldn't care if $200 million is going to cancer research for children, if that money is being spent wisely. I don't know if this money is being spent wisely. I don't know. The problem is, so many people just take at face value what something says. And this is particularly true of the Democrats, but Republicans do this as well. So, for example, if you go back to the debate that I had with people like, I don't think Pondering was there, Hutch was there, Pisco was there, it was a panel debate I did on Dylan Burns' show, going into the election. They didn't want to talk about the actual issues of things like the economy, etc. But the one talking point they had was, well, Kamala wants to spend all this money to build houses. Isn't that good? Spend money, build houses. Or Biden's massive infrastructure bill. That's good. Infrastructure is good. We should spend money on infrastructure. But the problem is, how is that money spent? If I were to say to you, hey everyone, I need you all to donate $1,000 to me so that I could lose weight, you would say, wow, losing weight, that's good. That'll be healthy. But then I took that money and just bought a bunch of, speed. I'm snorting drugs every night. Yeah, I might lose some weight. But if you don't send me that $1,000, then you're against people trying to get fit, right? You see the stupidity of it? And this isn't just in the abstract. How much money was spent on EV charging stations by the Harris-Biden administration? Remember the Obama administration giving money to fund green research for that company Solyndra that got hundreds of millions of dollars and then walked away doing nothing? Remember that? So the idea that we're just told, oh, well, you have to sign off on this $200 million or this $100 million, it's for cancer research, unless you're a monster. And that's how they're trying to paint Rand Paul, because Rand Paul's like, his big objection to this was, well, is this funding also, is it mirror funding elsewhere? Is there other funding going to this? So, just in general. Now, I don't know. This particular money to this particular organization might be incredibly well spent. It may be. I don't know, but I'm just saying in general. Anyone who people are bullshitting you that are like, oh yeah, this money, it's just going to cancer research, so you hate cancer research if you're against it. Maybe it's going back to some shady organization where let me give you an example that's even easier to understand. There's a ton of charities out there that the cause sounds great. But then you find out that like only 3 cents to the dollar you send to them actually goes to their stated mission. And the rest is going to administrative cost. And then you have some, the person who's heading the foundation's making hundreds of millions a year or something like that. But if you don't give to them, then you hate puppies or whatever it's that sort of idea. Again, I'm not saying that about this particular organization. I'm just saying that's the stupidity of it. Now, the same is true on the other side. If you say, well, if Democrats don't want to fund their border wall, they're clearly against border security. Not necessarily. They could say, we think the way that this funding going is nonsensical. It'll be a waste of money. The problem is Democrats can't really make the waste of money argument because they'll spend money on anything. But in general, those that are being legitimate, that are like, look, I'm not convinced with specifically where this money is going to be spent, I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily. I might disagree with them. I might think they're hypocritical. But in theory, either party saying, listen, just because you say this money is going to X doesn't mean I'm against X. If I say, no, I'm not voting for that. I could think that that money could be spent better elsewhere, or that we're spending too much, or I have questions as to how effective that money will be, etc. But this is the game that you see played, particularly on the Democratic side. So the narrative went out there. You had all these Democrats saying, because Republicans rejected that first CR bill, and then they pared down 1,500 pages to like 100 pages, and that cancer research line wasn't in there. Clearly, they're against cancer research. That was the narrative. You saw this from all sorts of talking heads on television. You saw this from Democrats, etc. And so I saw some of the left-wing commentators that I interact with on this channel and on X sometimes were commenting about this. My initial reaction was, as I've told you, look, just because they're not spending, this is just a rhetorical trick to say, oh, we have 1 million things that we put in this bill, and if you reject, instead of giving an up and down vote on each thing, you either have to accept it all or accept none of it. And if you don't accept it all, that means you hate cancer research. That's stupidity. But what made this unique example even funnier was, it turns out, Republicans in the Republican-controlled House in March of 2014 overwhelmingly voted to fund this cancer research center for kids. That bill passed overwhelmingly in the Republican-controlled House and then went to the Senate, where, surprise, surprise, the head of the Senate, Chuck Schumer, refused to put it up for a vote. In other words, we're supposed to believe that Democrats and their voters are like, my God, you'd be a monster not to immediately support this cancer research. You'd be a monster. Republicans in March were like, in the House were like, yeah, okay. Democrats were like, because you voted against this massive 1,500-page bill, that proves the Republicans in the House are monsters. They don't care about kids getting cancer. But they did. They funded it in March. They sent it to the Senate, and Chuck Schumer said, I'm good. I'm not going to put it up for a vote. That's what happened. So it was the Democrats that made sure that this wasn't voted upon. And so once this story breaks, where are all these lefties? Where are they? Where are all the Democrats that were saying, oh, Republicans hate kids' cancer research? Of course, then what happened was it last night or the night before, the Senate went ahead and put through the standalone bill, and it passed overwhelmingly. So it's been funded. Thank God, they said, about time, these Republicans. Republicans? It would have always passed. It was Schumer and the Democrats that held the bill up. Why did they hold the bill up? Can anyone tell me why they would hold it up? Now, I'll tell you what the spin is, but why do you think they would hold this bill up? Seemed to be massively popular with Republicans and Democrats in the House, would have been massively popular with Republicans and Democrats in the Senate, would have passed overwhelmingly, so why not bring it up for a vote? Why wouldn't they? Does anyone have a guess? That's right. Lewis gets it. To use his leverage for something else. To use his leverage for the massive spending bill. Everyone thinks this is a good idea. We'll hold it up and then put it in the spending bill. And then if Republicans don't vote for the spending bill with all this other stuff that we want in it, well, then that proves you don't care about kids with cancer. It's leverage. Now that's fine from a gamesmanship theory. But if you're going to get on your high horse and say, this proves that our opposition doesn't care about kids with cancer, it's farcical when your side is the side that held up the vote in the first place. So, did you see any of the left-wing pundits that were saying, the Republicans are terrible, they hate cancer research, they don't care about these kids? Did you see any of them saying, oh my God, Schumer and the Democrats didn't care about them? Did you see that? No, you didn't. Not one of them. Not one of them said, oh, my mistake. Let me give you I personally don't think that way. I don't think that any Republican or Democrat that would have voted against this bill doesn't give a shit if kids get cancer. I would say there could be a litany of reasons that they voted against it. But if the Democrat argument's going to be, Republicans rejected this 1,500-page bill, that proves they don't care about kids with cancer. Well, you know what's even a more stark Comparison, Republicans voted to fund the kids with cancer as a single issue, and Democrats intentionally held it up. That's the standard that they're using. So why shouldn't it be held to them? Let me give you an example of how this works. There was a picture that circulated around 2018, if I'm not mistaken, and it was actually pushed at one point by the official DNC Twitter page. And it was of a report that said, United States, UN investigation rolls United States worst in the developed world for the detention of children. And the Democrats put this out and was like, oh, yeah, see? And then it turned out that report was from 2014 when Obama was in office. And so the official Democrat page was like, oh, by the way, this happened with other things too. They put pictures of kids in cages looking sad. Look at what Trump did. And then you'd find out that picture was from 2015 when Obama had kids in cages. Did the Democrats say, did the people pushing that say, oh my God, Obama and the Democrats were monsters? Because they say, look at this picture, look at this study. It shows that Trump and his supporters, they're monsters for what they're doing to these kids. Oh, what's that? It's actually while Democrats and Obama were there? Oh, okay. So what, those kids don't matter all of a sudden? It's not like they're saying, I guess we were monsters. No, they're just like, oh, our mistake. Anyways, here's other pictures. Same thing here. How hard would it have been? Here's the truth. You want to know the truth? For the average ex-commentator and YouTube, left-wing YouTuber, here's the truth. Oh, I'll be right back. Give me a second. It's rare. I will be right back. Amuse yourselves for a minute. Be right back. Hello. Oh, I'm sorry. So sorry. That's very rare that something like that happens. I'm so sorry. But that's what happens even if you're off the clock and you're obligated to be at work. Sometimes you get weird middle of the night phone calls that you got to answer. So nothing serious, but it was an issue that needed dealt with. So anyways, we were on specifically then, it was not my mom. We are on specifically what's going on then with this cancer research bill, and the Democrats held it up. So when I see people like Pondering and Pisco posting on this on X, oh, look at these dastardly Republicans. Where's your commentary for the Democrats that held it up? Where is it? And they continue to make incredible asses of themselves while thinking that they're doing a phenomenal job of once more debunking me. Now, when you have a bigger presence on social media and when you're connected to, your daddy, Destiny, and people like that, so you have a lot more people that see, you could ratio me and you can get hundreds of people to like your post and whatever, and you could all slap yourself on the back. But the truth is, it's evident for anyone to see. This bill was passed by March by Republicans in the House. Democrats refused to allow to come up for a vote in the Senate. That's it. That's what happened. Now it's excuse time. So I wanted to go through some of the excuses that you see that the Democrats are offering. The first excuse is as follows. It's Rand Paul's fault. That's why. It's still Republicans' fault because it's Rand Paul's fault. You see, Rand Paul objected to this bill in the Senate. That's true. He did. That part of it's true, or at least it seems that that's what happened. I'll accept at face value that that's likely. Why did Rand Paul reject it? Well, there was a bill that the Senate offered as well, and we'll get to that in a second, and it would have funded slightly more money for slightly longer. Rand Paul was basically objecting to the ideas. He didn't want this to be like a double funding thing. I want to make sure we know where this money is coming from and that there's not more money going to it. That's it. Ah, you say, well then, it was Republicans. Rand Paul. Rand Paul's responsible. There you go. Only that's not the case. Now, before we get into how putting bills up for a vote in the Senate works, I want you to just think about this for a second. Do you think if there's a bill that 99 out of 100 senators, we'll just say hypothetically, 99 out of 100 senators like, and one senator says, I don't like it, and he's not the leader, he's not the head in the Senate, he's just a regular senator, and he says, man, I don't like that. Do you think that the way it works is, well, shucks, that's it. Nothing we can do then. One senator's against it. Oh, well, what can we do? Is there anyone out there, I don't care how much you know about government, is there anyone out there that believes that's the case? Because that's the Democrat messaging. That's what they want you to believe. It doesn't matter that it was overwhelmingly popular. Rand Paul was against it, so, shucks. You might say, well, wait a minute. If that's the case, how did the Democrats in the Senate ever get anything done? Surely there was at least one Republican that was against any of it, right? And wouldn't that be enough to say, well, shucks, what can we do? Nothing we can do. That's what they want you to believe. It's not Chuck Schumer's fault for not being up to a vote. It's Rand Paul. It went to committee and Rand Paul said, nope. Now, here's how the process actually works. There is an expedited process to get bills passed, and depending on the year, over 80 to 90% of bills that come through the Senate, many of them, and you have to understand, there's a lot of bills that come through the Senate that really do nothing. They're just sort of symbolic. They're passed through what's called unanimous consent. So if you've ever watched like C-SPAN or you've ever watched any congressional testimony, you'll see this all the time. You'll see them say, and your Republicans talking to the witnesses, and they'll say, well, this letter here that we have from Mark Zuckerberg, dated whatever, says that, quote, blah, 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 blah. And the witness will answer. And then at the end of that 5 minutes that senator gets, they'll say, I'd like to ask for unanimous consent that this be added to the record. And they'll say, without objection. No one objects? Great. Everyone agrees. Add it to the record. Doesn't matter. Everyone's basically like, sure, you could add everything to the record. Very rarely would you object to something being added to the official record. So you expedite the process. If there's an objection, they'll say, okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Now, the bills are different than that, but it's a similar idea. You say, hey, everybody agrees we could just go ahead and expedite this bill and pass it through unanimous consent? Sure, good, bam, let's go, next. But when that doesn't happen, if there's an objection, then you have to have a vote. Now, it gets more difficult. I'm not going to get into the examples of cloture and filibuster and all of that stuff, but the best that could happen is if there's a filibuster and one particular person wants to hold it up. That could be broken by a vote of 60 in the Senate. Now, this particular bill that passed overwhelmingly in the Democratic House would have passed, my guess is 90 votes, 95 votes. So it would have been enough to overrun any objections that Rand Paul or a handful of Republicans had. So all that needed to happen was for Chuck Schumer to put it on the docket, to schedule it, to come up for a vote. He didn't. So no, they're lying to you when they tell you, oh, Chuck Schumer's hands were tied. It was all about Rand Paul. That's a lie. Chuck Schumer was the person who could have brought this up for a vote. Even if the argument is, which is laughable, but if the argument would be, well, the Republicans could have filibustered and it would have prevented the Democrats from having enough votes, which is a joke, as is evidenced by the fact that it just passed unanimously once Rand Paul came on. But even if they want to make that argument, why wouldn't Schumer at least bring it up for a vote and force the Republicans? You can see that the Democrats were more than happy to blame Republicans for being against kids' cancer research with the continuing resolution. So why wouldn't they have at least did it and got it on record like, see, it was the Republicans? Why wouldn't they do that? Again, it's because they wanted to use it as leverage in negotiating for a continued resolution. That's excuse one. It was Rand Paul's fault. Excuse number two. Well, why didn't Republicans, just after they rejected the first continuing resolution, just add that part about funding cancer research into the second resolution and the third resolution? That's what Democrats are actually pissed about. Not that Republicans didn't fund cancer research for kids, it's that they took it out of the CR. That's what they're mad about. Okay, let's look at that. One, even if you accept this, if you accept everything about the stupidity of that, that still doesn't change the fact that Democrats, if they thought this issue was important, would have brought it for a vote in March. Doesn't change it. So the best you would be able to say is both Republicans and Democrats played politics with this. Okay? But that's not the argument. The argument was Republicans are evil. So why wouldn't Democrats be held to the same standard? Secondly, why should Republicans have to add it to a resolution if they've already voted on it? Why add it again? Third, the reason that this wasn't added, and I understand there are problems. I didn't like any of the 3 CRs that passed, or that came up for a vote, and the one that eventually passed. But the objection that people had that caused them to redo it was that they thought that the bill was way too big and covered way more things than just an emergency. We need to keep the government funded for 2 months until the next Congress and president gets in. So all this shit, 1,500 pages worth of shit, some of that might be good shit. We can deal with it in 2 months. Right now, we're paring this thing down. The bill should have been like 10 pages. So that's what was going on. It wasn't, oh, the fact that this wasn't re-brought up means that Republicans don't care about cancer research, as is belied by the fact that the Republicans already overwhelmingly voted for it in the Republican-controlled House in March, and the Republicans in the Senate just voted for it as a standalone issue just the other day. So that argument's garbage. The third argument, but the Democrats wanted to fund it more. See, the Republicans and the Democrats both put up a bill in the House and in the Senate. Well, I guess it was a Democrat in the Senate and a Democrat in the House that came up with the bill. Republicans overwhelmingly passed the House bill. The Senate bill would have offered more funding, incrementally increasing for longer years for this organization. So maybe the Senate wanted their own bill. Okay, one, Why didn't they pass their own bill then? That still doesn't bring, Chuck Schumer still never brought that bill up for a vote. He didn't bring any of the bills up for a vote on it. Second, why not pass the House bill you had that you know you could overwhelmingly pass and then argue for the supplemental funding? If a standalone bill came up, for example, in Trump's first term, and he's like, we want $5 billion for the wall, and the Democrats said, well, here's a bill that we'll accept that says $4.5 billion, and it's standalone. That's it. Why wouldn't you accept that? You'd say, okay, we'll take that. Now we're going to fight for the other $500 million. But that's the argument that Pisco is particularly the hill he's going to die on. Well, it can't be that Democrats ignored this cancer bill because inevitably in the continuing resolution, they asked for more money. And they were already funded up through 2024. Now that's quite the claim. That might be true. There was funding for this particular agency into 2024. This happened in a previous CR. But did that money run out for them in 2024? Did they need more by the end of 2024? I don't know. And anybody who's in an organization will tell you that predictability is very important to planning out your future projects. I don't care if you're funded by the government or if you're a private business. Businesses want a predictable, stable environment. So if you're doing research and you're investing in projects, you want to know, what's our budget look like next year? What's our budget look like for the year after? What's the budget look like for the year after that? The further out you could go, the better. But you definitely want to know, what's our budget look like next year? Or in this case, next month. So I'm to believe that Democrats purposely left this cancer research agency not knowing for months. Okay, they don't do it in March, fine. April, May, June, July. That agency's probably starting to get a little worried. Oh, it's July. What's our funding like for next year? Republicans already passed this bill. August, September, October, November. Hey, Republicans passed this bill. Democrats. Now, maybe that agency will come out and say, actually, we like what the Democrats did. I don't give a shit. The point still stands. Why wouldn't you give these people, if you cared about this organization and cancer research, why wouldn't you have passed the bill or at least put it up for a vote that the Republicans already passed? Well, they wanted to add it to the CR and ask for more money in the CR. Now, I'm going to ask all of you for a second. You might have to know a little bit about politics to know this. When the Republicans control a House, how hard is it for them to pass a CR or a budget? Is it something that usually happens very easily or something that has a lot of difficulties on average in the past decade? Anyone with any knowledge of this want to speak up? I'll give you a clue. Jake Tapper went viral the other day for giving the answer to this. He said, why is it when Republicans are there and budgets come up, what did he say? That it always passes easily? That's right. It's very difficult. Very difficult. And that's because Republicans run on the idea of being fiscally conservative. Most of the time it's a lie. But then what happens is, when it's time for the budget, they're like, oh, well, we have to spend this big monies. We got to bullshit our constituents. So it's always difficult. So then why would Chuck Schumer take a guaranteed victory of having this bill that he sat on for months and could have passed, and instead say, I'll gamble it on a continuing resolution. I'll gamble it on it. It'll be all or nothing. Why would he do that? Why not take the easy win? Because the argument that Pisco and them are making, well, they knew the CR would pass and there'd be more money for them. That's good. So they said, we'll wait for 9 months. But they didn't know, as is evidenced by the fact that it didn't pass. Just like there was so much difficulty previous times that Republicans controlled the House. Now let me help their side's argument a little more. Well, Rob, Schumer would have known that if he didn't get his wish and he didn't get more money in the CR, that he could have always went back to the table and then, after the CR failed, brought this up as a single issue and it would have passed, as is what happened. Great. That's fine if that's your argument. But then what you mean to tell me is they always knew that it was a lie that Republicans didn't want to fund this. Because they knew deep down Republicans in the House already voted to fund it and the Republicans in the Senate also would. If they were worried that Republicans wouldn't fund this if it didn't come through in the CR, then why give away an easy victory for attempting to throw this in a 1,500-page CR? If they said no matter what, Republicans will fund at least what they already voted for, then they're full of shit when they went out in the media cycle and said, oh, Republicans don't care about cancer research. That's it. That's the entirety of their argument. One, it's Rand Paul's fault. That's the first argument. Second, well, when they rejected the first CR, they didn't re-put it in the second CR. And third, but they actually wanted more money, so that's okay. Now, let's do a little thought experiment, right? For the people like Pisco and Pondering, and I don't give a shit, the Rachel Maddows, the Jake Tapper, whoever was out there pushing this narrative, right? Pisco specifically says, you can't blame Democrats for sitting on the bill that House passed because 9 months later, they were fighting for more money. So let's go with this hypothetical. Let's say, this was the hypothetical I asked Pisco. Let's say Republicans say, look, we want more funding for victims of Hurricane Helene. Okay? Now, for this example, let's assume, hypothetically, that Democrats won the Senate. Then you'd have a similar situation. Once Trump comes into office, you'd have a Republican president, a Republican Senate, but a Democrat House. Okay? Just like now, with this current CR, we have a Republican House, but a Democrat Senate and a Democrat president. So let's just reverse it. We got President Trump, Republicans in the Senate, but the Democrats narrowly control the House. So Republicans start gnashing their teeth. We want money for Hurricane Helene victims. And Democrats say, okay, here's a bill that gives them $1 billion. And they pass it overwhelmingly in the House. So it goes to the Senate, and God forbid Mitch McConnell or who is it? Is it Cornyn or Thune, you know? They're the head of the Republicans in the Senate. And they say, yeah, we're not going to bring it up for vote. Then at the end of the year, they put out a CR. They're like, we'll attach it to a funding bill. But in this funding bill, we're going to put all kinds of crazy shit. We want billions of dollars for the wall. We want billions of dollars for an immigration task force that removes illegal immigrants. Millions of dollars to the NRA and to gun owners. And by the way, this funding bill, you would think, oh, it just has funding items. No, it had all kinds of shit. Like, it'd have random shit in there, like, supposed to be an emergency funding bill that would say things like, oh, and members of the House, if it would give up House data, you can't subpoena their records. So it has all kinds of shit like that. The Democrats will be furious. Now, they know Democrats hate all this shit, but they put that all in. And then they say, oh, and instead of $1 billion for victims of Helene, we want $1.1 billion. And what Pisco's telling you is, that's it. That proves that Republicans care about victims of Helene and Democrats don't if they reject that bill. Proves it. That's it. That proves it. Either Democrats vote for this bill with all this shit they don't like in it, or they don't care about victims of Helene. And if someone said, but Pisco, they already voted to give $1 billion and Republicans sat on the bill, Pisco would say, that doesn't matter. Republicans wanted slightly more money. So, you see, do any of you for a second think he'd say, yep, that makes sense? Anyone for a second? You don't think for a second he wouldn't correctly say, Republicans held that up for 9 months? Democrats already voted for it? Sure, I'm sure they want a little more. Okay, on the specifics. But the idea that you're blaming Democrats for not caring about these victims when they voted to give them money 9 months ago and Republicans purposely chose to sit on that and not bring it for a vote is absurd. And it would be absurd. But no, says Pisco. So in Pisco's defense list is going, well, there's a difference because cancer research funding isn't something that's an immediate emergency like hurricane victim funding. And I said, well, how about this? The hypothetical doesn't mean we already sent emergency money. Now the hypothetical is just infrastructure in the area. 5-year projects to build new power lines and new roads that were washed out because of the hurricane. So it's not an emergency, it's not pressing. And here's an even better hypothetical. You ready? Same situation. Democrats won the House, Republicans have the presidency, Republicans have the Senate. And Republicans say, we want funding for cancer research for children. And Democrats say, okay, here's $1 billion over the next, $10 million a year over the next 6 years. Passes in the Democrat-controlled House. Republican Senate refuses to bring it for a vote. Republicans then put it in a continuing resolution to fund the border wall, to fund immigration task force to remove illegals. Democrats say, but they add an extra $2 million to the funding per year. Democrats say, no, we don't like all of that extra shit. We're not voting for it. Okay. You still say that it's fair to say, well, Democrats don't care about cancer research? You think it's fair to say that? Here's the truth. People like Pisco, and I'll throw myself in there. I didn't know shit all about this March cancer research bill. Did you? Be honest with yourself. Did you know in March 2024, the Republicans in the House overwhelmingly passed to fund this cancer research center for kids' cancer? Did you know it? I didn't. So I'm not blaming people for not knowing. And what happened was, like always, these massively inflated bills, there's easy emotional talking points that you could bring into them. Okay, Republicans voted against this 1,500 plus page bill. Let's find something in there that we could pull heartstrings to the people. Oh, look at this. It offered $50,000 to a vet clinic for puppies. Republicans hate puppies. That's it. That's all it was. Well, what's a good one? Kids with cancer. Oh my goodness, they rejected kids with cancer? That's what they did? You see? So that's the story they go with. Bam! Kids with cancer, they reject it. That's how simple it is. That's how they came up with that. Only they didn't know that Republicans funded this months ago. Now, what they would have said was, well, okay, I guess that wasn't the best example. Nonetheless, there are other things that were in that 1,500-page bill that we think are important that Republicans didn't fund. But they don't have the emotional appeal of kids with cancer. So instead of admitting the truth, well, okay, if Republicans voted to fund this previously, clearly they're not callous and don't give a shit about kids with cancer. Maybe we could have an argument as to whether we should fund them more, but all of a sudden the callous Republicans don't care about kids with cancer line is bullshit. But they have no choice but to double down. That's all they know. That's all they know. Again, I want to be quite clear. I'm not saying Chuck Schumer, if he saw that his granddaughter got cancer, he wouldn't be affected. For all I know, Chuck Schumer, if he could snap his fingers and if a genie came down and said, all right, Mr. Schumer, yes or no, you want to end childhood cancer? He'd probably say, sure. He saw it as a bargaining chip. That's what he saw it as. Chuck Schumer knows, and all of the Democrats know, that Republicans rejecting a massive bill, emergency funding bill that's 1,500 plus pages, doesn't mean that they don't care about kids with cancer. They know it, but for politics, they're going to pretend. And for politics, Chuck Schumer's going to say, we'll sit on this bill and then try to use it as leverage for our continuing resolution. And for politics, it's not even that bad of an idea. But to then claim a moral high ground, we care about kids with cancer and they don't is bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. If you have to say, coming out of this, that either Republicans in the House don't care about kids with cancer, or the Democrats in the Senate don't care about kids with cancer, the group that acted in a way that suggests that more is the Democrats in the Senate. Because the Republicans voted in March to fund it, and the Democrats withheld the vote. They would not bring it up for a vote. Now, I choose to believe that neither side is that callous that doesn't care about kids with cancer. But if you have to, my standard shouldn't apply. The standard that should apply is the people making the argument. If the Democrats are going to make the argument, the fact that Republicans rejected that CR and then rewrote it that was 15 times smaller and it didn't include that one provision, that proves they don't care about kids with cancer, then it's more egregious that they already voted for it and Democrats sat on the bill and wouldn't vote for it. The Democrats are worse in that sense. Why shouldn't they be held to the standard that they wanted their opponents held to? And for me, in my little world, I always find it hilarious when I deal with these people, like your Piscos, your Ponderings, just how bad faith they are. And the projection is incredible. If you go to X and you watch the interactions, the comments that people are making me is like, wow, Rob, I used to think you were good faith, but this is beyond the pale. So wait a minute. You heard me arguing before, but what I said that was beyond the pale was this. If Republicans are saying, or if Democrats are saying Republicans don't care about kids with cancer because they didn't vote for this bill, but now we find out that they actually voted to fund that as a standalone in March, and it was Democrats that refused to bring it for a vote, doesn't that show some hypocrisy and maybe the Democrats don't care? That's too much, Rob. That's bad faith. Clearly Democrats care and Republicans don't. Clearly that's what's happening. And it's just, you're too much. It's too bad faith to suggest otherwise. Wow, you're getting, and Pisco's even like, Rob, I'm blowing you out here. Blowing what out? Well, you know, it was Rand Paul. Rand Paul's the one who held this up. Hey, Pisco, yes or no? Could Chuck Schumer have brought it up for a vote even with Rand Paul objecting? Well, yeah, but it's arduous. Cool, so if it's an issue they care about, sure, it's more arduous than unanimous consent. And bring it up for a vote. Schedule it, bam, vote, go. Oh, you're worried that Rand Paul filibuster? 60 votes, breaks the filibuster. Go. Oh, well, that's just ridiculous. And Democrats wanted more funding in the CR. Now, Democrats wanted to use it as leverage and play politics. That's what they wanted to do. That's what they did. And these people just stay in their little bubble. But the good news is this. It doesn't matter. I'm not saying that my political party or my political agenda will win in perpetuity going out. In fact, I think I'm still cynical. I still think that very little will be done to really end corruption, which is my big issue. And I don't think we'll see any fiscal conservatism anytime soon either, from Trump or from people around him. But I'd be remiss if I don't say that those people in that bubble that also had knockdown, drag-out debates with me about things such as Tony Hinchcliffe saying a joke at a Republican convention or campaign event. Oh, the Republicans, this is such a huge issue. Republicans hate Puerto Ricans. How'd that go? That's where Pisco was. That's where those guys were then. How'd that work? I choose to believe that the American people were smart enough to be like, wait a minute. So they're saying Republicans don't care about cancer research because they didn't vote for this massive bill. But as a standalone issue, they voted for it in March, and it was the Democrats that refused to then bring it up for a vote in the Senate? Yeah, that's bullshit. I choose to believe that the majority of people will believe that, no matter how much they want to spend. But Rand Paul objected. Okay, American people, do you think that the Democrat leader who has the ability to bring bills up isn't allowed to bring a bill up if one person objects? Do you think that's how our system works? But it doesn't matter. They won't tell the truth. They won't. And I'm sorry because I still like arguing with Pisco and I still wish him well. But does anyone now see why it was, for me, such an important moment to have that debate with him about Jamal Bowman? For those that don't know, Pisco's this lawyer on the left I used to enjoy debating all the time. Recently, since the election, he's been in a very sad mood because his side didn't win. And I've heard some scuttlebutt that maybe his master and his daddy, Destiny, told him that he can't talk to me. I know Destiny had yelled at him previously for talking to me and for saying that I shouldn't be blacklisted. Destiny was very upset about that. Nonetheless, I used to talk to him all the time. I'd still talk to him. I don't care. We'd talk about complicated issues, scandals. We'd talk about investigations into Trump, investigations into Hillary, investigations into Hunter Biden. And no matter how right I think I am, the truth is there are arguments on all sides of those issues. It's very rarely 100% cut and dry. I think that once you see the pattern that it always goes in the same direction, that it starts to become a clear picture. But there are arguments to be had on all sides of this. So when you get something that's clear cut, you start to get an insight. Is this person I'm arguing with, just like all of us, has some bias, but that bias is able to be overcame if there's overwhelming evidence of one thing or another? That's human nature. We all have bias. That's completely acceptable. Or are they bad faith and they only care about their team winning? And even when there is overwhelming evidence that's indisputable in their face, they'll refuse to say something that they think hurts their team. And that's who Pisco is. And I've talked about this many a time, so if you want to tune out now, I totally get it. But the Jamal Bowman situation, if you don't remember, was a Democrat congressperson who pulled a fire alarm while there was this vote going on that Democrats were trying to stall. He made the excuse that he pulled the alarm in an attempt to unlock a door. It was always a nonsensical position. It was a delay tactic. That was the most likely scenario. But that's not even where me and Pisco's real dispute comes in. The real dispute is Pisco has said over and over that serious crimes were committed by Trump and people surrounding Trump, and one of those serious crimes is lying to law enforcement. And that's very serious. It needs to be punished very strictly. Okay? He also then makes the mistake of admitting publicly that clearly Jamal Bowman knew that that alarm was going to go off. He clearly knew it. Okay? Now, Pisco understands that he could say, oh, I think, Bowman's guilty of a slap on the wrist. He shouldn't have pulled that alarm. Give him a small fine. Good to go. But he doesn't want him punished more severely. More importantly, the law enforcement people didn't want him punished more severely, particularly when it came to interfering with an official proceeding, which is what he did, or lying to law enforcement, because they're using that as a weapon to go after Trump supporters. So they don't want to charge someone on their own side with that. Same thing, they want to charge Hunter Biden with FARA violations. Same reason. Anyways, from the perspective of just me and Pisco, two human beings that are arguing, that talk about these issues a lot. Pisco says it's an obvious lie. He obviously knew the alarm was going off, and lying to law enforcement's a big deal. Then they put up the transcript of Jamal Bowman's interactions with law enforcement. Law enforcement specifically asked him, did you intend for an alarm to go off? An alarm. Jamal Bowman says no. That's it. Cut and dry. Lie. So I say to Pisco, why wasn't he charged with lying to law enforcement? It's clearly a lie. It's clearly material to the case. Why isn't he charged? Clearly that shows a double standard. And Pisco's argument was, I'm not making this up, his argument was, well, when he said no, that he didn't intend for an alarm to go off, what he really meant was yes. See, then it's not a lie. Hey, Rob, did you eat the last cookie in the cookie jar? No. Well, really? Because I put up our Ring camera facing the cookie jar and there you are eating it. You lied to me. No, because when I said no, I meant to say yes. Oh, okay, then it's not a lie. That's what Pisco said. Now, if you want to get more technical, what he said, by the way, he'll admit this. He has to. It's all over tape. It's been taped over and over. He says, well, I think what he meant was, the question was, did he intend for the global alarm to go off? And no, he didn't. He just intended for the local alarm to go off. So when he said, no, I didn't intend for an alarm to go off, what he meant was, yes, I intended for that alarm to go off, but not that one. Bullshit. It's not better. That's his answer is when he said, no, I don't intend for the alarm to go off, he meant, yes, I did intend for one to go off. That's his argument. Now, why would you believe him all of a sudden when it comes to, well, actually, in this instance, I do believe that the Democrats were right to say Republicans didn't care about cancer research, even though they voted as a standalone issue back in March to do it, and even though it was the Democrats that refused to bring it to the vote. And if the shoe was on the other foot and it was Republicans and Democrats that were reversed, I'd feel the same way. Bullshit. You're a liar. You're lying. And everyone can see it. And I don't give a shit that all your DGG buddies are backing you. I don't care. I don't need that. I don't need to have my little team of people I do a video with every day say, yay, Rob, yeah, you're right. But I don't need that shit. I'll debate all of them together all the time. I don't give a shit. That's what's going on. So I just thought it was funny, and I wanted to talk about this story in particular. To watch them spin. And in the grand scheme of things, does it matter that much? I mean, there's not going to be an election for Congress for 2 years. The new Congress isn't even sworn in yet. How hard would it just be like, I'm just not going to... Not even to not... Of course, the right thing to say was like, oh, okay, I was wrong. I guess that was... I blew the whistle a little early there. I didn't know Republicans voted for this before. Okay. That'd be the right thing. But hell, you could even just ignore it. Just move on. But no. They got to come out. Oh, let's debunk this. Here we go. Are you fucking kidding me? It's Rand Paul's fault. Does it advantage them that much? Do you think that argument's going to help them win an election in 2 years? No. But they can't help themselves. They can't. They don't know how to have an honest discussion. They don't. So, anyways, that's it. We're going to wrap up here. I'll try to stream a little Christmas Day at some point. It will not be a big stream, but I'll probably stream to just tell people Merry Christmas, maybe 5-10 minutes. But that'll probably be about it. I doubt I'll be able to stream. I definitely won't be able to stream Christmas Eve. So maybe there's a chance if I have downtime tomorrow, I'll be able to stream. But most likely won't be able to do that. I'll be busy here at work. Even, I'm sure you could guess, especially Christmas Eve, I'll be busy in the wee hours to the morning here. So, which is a good thing. So that'll be good. So if I don't see any of you, Merry Christmas. I'll try to do a regular stream Thursday, so you'll definitely see me then. But I always enjoy hanging out with you all. And, you know, they say one of the things you're supposed to take stock of on Christmas is the idea of giving. And I do think that my audience gives me a lot. You make me want to do this show and have fun doing it. So I do really thank you for that. It is really amazing that even one person listens to me, let alone, you know, tonight we had 60. Sometimes we have 100, 200. So it's really humbling, and I do appreciate it. I also appreciate those of you that have sent me money in the past. It really does. It means a lot. So special Christmas shout out also to my editor, Black Elk, who does a phenomenal job. We got some things coming up here. Once we get to the new year, some different types of shows, some ideas to how to improve the show. So I think he's been doing a phenomenal job, and so I'd be remiss if I didn't shout him out. He really puts in a lot of hours editing, talking to me on the phone, coming up with ideas. Really a lot of the work that's improved the show, I think, in this past 6 months, 8 months. So I can't thank him enough. I think he's done a tremendous job. So Merry Christmas to Black Elk and his family as well. So and everyone else out there that's helped me with the show. I really appreciate it. Special shout outs to everyone that's here for the first time because you saw me arguing against an OnlyFans performer. It's not something that I like to do much. I understand if I did that more. I think I'm a pretty funny guy. I think my arguments are pretty sound. I think that I probably, oh, thanks so much, Tyler Durton. Merry Christmas, Rob. Gives me $10. Thank you. I think that I would be good at doing it, but I just don't really want to do it. So I know it would probably increase the reach on my show, but I am who I am. So that's all I have to say. So, all right, everyone, we'll see you soon. Have a very Merry Christmas, and as always, have a good one.